Welcome to SuperCoach and welcome to another player profile. Now, a lot of talk in the tennis about the next generation of top men's players coming through, and perhaps we're seeing the next generation of premium SuperCoach players coming through as well, because there's certainly a few names that we're perhaps losing faith with a little bit that have been soldiers in our midfielders in particular for years and years, and a few new names coming through. And I'm going to talk about one of those today, and that's Matt Crouch. Now, there's no denying last season was unbelievable, a huge breakout season. Of course, 2016, he certainly put himself on the map, but in terms of numbers, he really exploded last year. I mean, 33 touches a game he averaged. That's unbelievable. That's an extremely good consistency and such a high quantity. I mean, it's easy to have the odd 21, 22, but clearly he was 30 plus on so many occasions. And that meant he was 100 plus on so many occasions in SuperCoach. Now, the season average was 110.6, but in a moment we're going to look at the back end, and that's what is really juicy. Now, of course, his seasons to date, not quite all of them, but certainly going to 2015 to 2016 was the big one. That was 68.3 into 92.8. A real solid breakout, but next year, or last year I should say, the next one after that was the big one, going up 18 more points per game into the 110 and really announcing himself as a genuine premium midfielder. So what I want to talk about today is can we trust him? Can he be someone we can bank on year upon year? Just want to talk a few pros and cons. But the last 16 games, we're including finals there, were just unbelievable. I barely went under 100. I think his only under 100 game was a 91. In the last 16 games, he averaged 121.9. Now, that's huge. Now, I remember talking about Billings the other day, and, you know, different sample sizes, you can twist stats here and there and different numbers to mean different things, but 16 games is a huge sample. Now, 121 is a massive, massive average. Now, would I expect him to average that? No, but it does show what he's capable of when he's running hot, and I could see him certainly improving that 110 average, but we'll discuss a couple of things that you might want to think about as well. So 608k, he's not coming cheaply, but he's a man in his prime. When the season comes around, he'll basically be 23 years old, 72 games. He and Rory Sloane really do own that midfield now. The other Crouch fella as well in there and a few other guys, but they are the real main ones. Now, Rory Sloane copped a lot of attention with the tag. Now, he did struggle at times. When he wasn't tagged, he went huge. When he was tagged, he was really blanketed. Now, my main concern about Crouch, I'll start on the negative point of view and then reaffirm with the positive. My main and probably only concern is that he's only produced premium numbers on one season. Now, this could be, when we look in 5 years, this could be the first of 5 years where he averages 110 plus. Or we could see him slightly come back to the pack. I'm not too sure, but I do recall many a player who was broken out, and then their second season after being a real recognised star of the game, they don't fall off the face of a cliff by any means, but it's a slight pegging back. Teams do a bit more homework on them. They understand what they're all about. They really look into how they can best stop their game. The thing with Crouch is I think it's very difficult to stop his attributes, but no doubt there'll be far more homework going into Matt Crouch this year than there was last year. He's a genuine threat. He's a match winner. He's shown he can do it. So teams are going to put a bit more homework into him. And he's 608k, so it's a massive amount of money, and when you're spending that amount of coin, it needs to be a no-brainer. It needs to be, yep, I'm putting 600k here, but I know I'm getting a 110 to 120 guy for the whole season. So that's my only concern, is that he doesn't have the runs on the board. And as I said, this may well be the start of 5 to 6 to 7 years where he goes 110 plus. He's got that ability, but we've just got to take that into our consideration. Now, the positive is clear. I think it's very difficult to stop what he does. He's an accumulator. He does find his own ball. He uses it quite nicely. He's quite a neat kick. He's not super damaging, but just a neat left foot kick. And perhaps when we talk about taggers, maybe Crouch falls into that category where, well, look, maybe we'll give Matty Crouch 30 to 35 touches because it's not hurting us as much as a Rory Sloane or someone else in that midfield. We see that conversation with the likes of a Rockcliffe or a Tom Mitchell. You know, maybe tag this guy because he's not going to get you 30, but he's more damaging, and we can feel we can turn his 30 touches into 15, where if we tag Crouch, we're probably turning 35 into 27 or 28. He's still going to find ways to win the ball. And further to that, I think teams, if I'm playing the devil's advocate to what I just said, I think teams would have got to late in the season last year and been doing a huge amount of homework on Matt Crouch, particularly coming into finals. Clearly, they're not just going to let him go about his business and we'll do some homework on you when we've got a bit of time in the pre-season. Clearly, a lot of work went into him. You can always do a lot more work in the pre-season on players and opposition analysis, but certainly they would have been well aware of what he does. And obviously it was a matter of either they felt they couldn't stop him, or the certain teams in that latter stages of the season that did try to stop him, well, clearly it didn't work. So is he untaggable? I'm not so sure he's untaggable, but like those players that do rack up the ball with ease like he does, and maybe they don't hurt you as much, sometimes teams will not just allow them to get 30, but they'll be a little more comfortable with that type of player getting 35 touches than, say, a Dustin Martin or something like that. But I do feel there would have been many occasions where the coaches sat around on a Friday and said, we want to stop Crouch, you do a hard tag on him, and he still came out with 32 touches. So there's certainly a good argument that he can still put up pretty good numbers, even with a bit of attention, because the way he wins the ball, he wins his own footy, he's in there tackling hard at every contest. So where do I stand with Crouch? I do feel like he's a pretty good selection. You know, if I'm putting a range in where he's going to average, probably looking at 106 to 112, and you know that last 16 games suggests he could go over 112. That's just my guess in a range, and depending how much of what I've talked about comes true and which parts of it will probably define that range. You know, if teams do find a way to stop him a little bit, and that second year premium blues, if that's even a thing, kicks in and just has a slight coming back to the pack before he starts to really deal with that attention. We saw a little bit of Bontempelli. I think from memory, Josh Kennedy, the Swan, when he really broke out, I think maybe he had a season where he averaged around 118, 120, dropped back to about 108, then was back up to those good numbers. So it can happen, it can fluctuate. I'd be predicting somewhere around that 106 to 112 mark. And I guess you might ask, well, Shorty, why is he not in your team? Probably got a little bit more confidence in a couple of other guys, and a couple of guys offering some slight more value as a premium with, I feel, just as much upside. And generally, you like to have, when you're paying 600k, a little bit more runs on the board, because that is getting towards the real upper end of spending. So I do think if you really are a big fan of him, he's a point of difference. So that's something else that you got to think about, because at this point in time, I've hardly seen him in any sides, and he's the sort of type that most are going to go, yeah, Crouch, you go pretty well, but I'm more excited about Bontempelli, or I'm more excited about so-and-so. So I think Crouch is the sort of guy that I feel if you like him and you're a big fan of him, he's certainly not going to drop off the face of the earth and go back to around 100. I think your worst case scenario is around 106, 107, with the potential to go 115 if you really want to get excited. So I think he could be a very good option and provide a point of difference. And he does, as I said at the top, falls into that next generation, the likes of Zach Merritt and Lockie Neal and those types who are coming through, Cripps and Bontempelli, of course, mentioned Josh Kelly. They're all the sort of guys that are perhaps taking over your Gary Abletts, your Scott Pendleburys, your Josh Kennedys, all those types. So perhaps a slight changing of the guard, but we'll have to wait and see how it all pans out. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Much appreciated. I will be doing plenty more player profiles, and I feel at the moment I'm one of the few who are. It seems like Jock Reynolds doesn't seem to be around a SuperCoach page doing anything. So get on board Shorty SuperCoach. Get on board SuperCoach HQ. If you've got a mate who loves his SuperCoach and he's hanging out for a bit of info, get him on board to us. And, you know, certainly they're coming thick and fast, these previews. I've got a reasonable archive already at the moment. If you're just getting excited about SuperCoach, there's a fair bit for you to go through already. And I'll be doing plenty more, looking to do one every couple of days. And perhaps when we get even closer to the season, it could be, 5 to 6 a week. So Thanks again for tuning in. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nearly at the 1,000 mark, which I'll be super excited about. Comment away. Give the video a like. I'll chat to you soon. Thanks, guys.